Hello, and welcome to my second video about the shmup genre. If you're not familiar with shoot-'em-up games, my first video is here, and it might be a good place to start for you. This video is about the divide between casual and non-casual play, the steps involved in crossing that gap, and all the information I can provide to help you decide whether it might be a good idea for you. This is not here to convince people that they should play one of these games seriously. Instead, I want to demystify some of the things about dedicated play and the process of getting there so that people can make better decisions about it. Some of the advice here might be helpful for things outside the shmup genre as well. First, I need to define a couple of things. What exactly divides casual from non-casual play? Different people will have different opinions about this, but the idea I go by is that if you make a conscious effort to practice a game regularly, you are no longer casual. It doesn't matter what the game is or what difficulty you might decide on. If you practice, then you are no longer casual. There's a lot involved in setting a goal for yourself and sticking with it to the end. So I did this myself and documented all the steps along the way to share them with you. I started with a game I hadn't played before so that no part of the learning process would be missed. This is not about specific shmup techniques. I can make a video about that if you really want me to, but there are better resources for that than anything I could come up with. In particular, there's a video called Bullet Hell Shmups More Than Dodging, which is a great starter's guide. As well, there's a more in-depth series by the Electric Underground that I linked in the description. With this in mind, let's talk about the first and largest step on this journey. I wouldn't say that getting started is most of the work, but it is the most difficult part of it. I had some trouble getting started on this project because I knew from experience that this sort of thing would take at least several months. If you decide to play seriously, it's probably best to just focus on the very first thing to do, and that would be picking a game. There's something to be said for going with the first one that comes to mind and jumping into stage select to plan out a better score or a better survival route. But if you're the meticulous type, it might help to come up with a list of things you're looking for and put some time into finding a good fit. As an example, let me give some of the reasons I picked Danmaku Unlimited 3 for my project. It is not frustrating. This is not the same as being easy. Rather, it's very straightforward about what it wants you to do, and when you make a mistake, it's clear about what you did wrong. And speaking of being clear, it has clean visuals. Everything about the bullets, the enemies, and your fighter are very easy to distinguish from each other. Well, this sort of thing is important for any game, but especially so in Bullet Hell, and some of them are known for not being so great along those lines. It has a distinct scoring system as opposed to just shooting everything, and the more things you kill, the more points you get. I wanted to do this because I like games that make you work a little bit extra, where you have to think up not only about survival, but also on a separate set of things you need to do for better score. It makes the games more interesting, in my opinion. Of course, not everyone feels that way, and that's fine. There's plenty of shmups that for different tastes in that regard. And finally, it has decent practice tools. I say decent. The best would be save states, but not many games have that unless they're emulated, and we're not talking about emulation in this video. It has stage select, which is the bare minimum, and it also has boss select, which is a very nice step up. I found that very useful, and it even allows you to practice the true last boss. And that on its own is not guaranteed, so extra points for that. Now, about setting a goal. If your game has difficulty selection, most of them do, I recommend you try a higher difficulty than you're comfortable with at least a little before setting a firm goal. You might be surprised at how much you can handle. As for the goal itself, completing the game in 1 credit is a time-honored one, or if you're really new, you can just set your goals one stage at a time. I wouldn't recommend making the goal extremely easy, though. And I also wouldn't recommend setting a goal based on anyone else's score if you're still just getting used to the game. That can get discouraging pretty fast. Personal bests are fine, though. As for me, I like true last bosses in these kinds of games. I think they're cool. So I set a true last boss clear as my goal for this game. That means I would have to select hard difficulty, since that boss doesn't show up any lower than that. Now that I have an idea of what I'm going for, I need to load up the game and get started. Since I don't know much about the game, I'm just going to grab a weapon set that looks fun and jump in. But very soon, anyone who takes on a game like this has another decision to make. You'll want to decide between copying others and being a pioneer. In my case, I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't find any gameplay footage of the weapon set I chose, and videos of hard spirit mode are also pretty rare. So I would have to learn what I would do through the entire game myself. Creating routes through games is something I enjoy a lot, so it's no problem for me. It will take longer than if I had a good replay to follow, and if you're new to this sort of game, it might help a lot to have a visual guide. This is easier for games that have a built-in replay system, since you can usually find forums or Discord servers where people trade replays and keep archives of them. DU3 doesn't seem to have anything like that though, so I'm pretty much on my own. Forging your own routes can be pretty frustrating. You can try something out and not know if it failed because it's a bad idea, or because you haven't practiced it enough yet, and you can waste a lot of time on a plan when a better option is out there. Changing routes after you spend some time practicing a different route can take some time too. You need to kind of rewire yourself to do something new without having to think about it. And since we're talking about things that take a lot of time, play a bit every day. Even though we're talking about dedicated play, this doesn't have to be a full-time job. A half hour for 4 consecutive days works a lot better than 2 hours one day and skipping the next 3. Keeping your routine on the shorter side can also help prevent burnout. I set up a schedule that I was willing to stick with for a pretty long time until following it became more natural than trying to take a break from it. This is a lot easier with a game that you really enjoy, of course, which is why things like good graphics and soundtrack can have a big effect on whether you're willing to stick with the gameplay. It is nice to leave room for longer sessions when you're feeling up to it, but not everyone has a lot of spare time and it's not required. Also, make sure to get plenty of sleep and try to eat reasonably healthy if you can. Those things affect how sharp you are and how fast you can learn. Carl's How to Practice video in the description has a lot more detail on effective practice scheduling and techniques. There's also Prometheus's excellent guide on practice called Full Extent of the Jam, though some of that is more specific to the older arcade games. Once you start practicing, you should make sure that what you learn in your practice sticks. Keep track of what you learn, even the smallest things. Not everyone needs to take notes, but for some people it helps a lot. I kept a journal of what I did every day, and it had a few effects. One is that it helped me remember what I was doing, and I could look certain things up if I was a little hazy on them. But it also motivated me to try new things every day and pay close attention because I wanted to have something new to add for as long as I could manage it. This is less important when you have everything routed out and it's just a matter of memorizing it and refining your execution, but getting to that point takes a while, and tracking your progress can help to get you there. I've also linked my own journal in the description just in case you wanted to see what my own process looks like. You might make changes in your gameplay that set you back as you relearn things. Anytime you learn something new about a stage that you thought you had down, you're going to make mistakes as you reroute things. I remember getting annoyed at discovering little ways to improve a stage because it meant I would have to think about what I was doing again. But that's nothing compared to when I decided to switch my weapon loadout entirely. In the long run, that helped a lot with my consistency against most of the bosses, but there were a lot of things that I had to change and relearn. And that's not the only thing you might change while you're doing this. Here's a couple more. You might change your goals. I mentioned that I wanted to clear the game, including the true last boss. As I played and learned more about the game, I realized that I also just wanted my run to look good. In particular, I want the final 2 stages to go smoothly. They look really good if you play through them well. The fact that they account for most of your score might have something to do with that as well. So when I finally got my first true final boss clear, I kept going. My goals had changed. That's not the only direction this can go. I discovered a way to get a nice looking hyper activation in stage 1, but it was so finicky to set up that I gave up on it just to avoid getting stuck there every time I tried to play. That sort of thing hurts a bit, but there's nothing wrong with scaling things back a bit for your own sanity. If I played for a while and just wanted to do anything other than keep playing, something else might have happened. And that something is, you might switch games entirely. This doesn't mean the time you spent on the last game was wasted. Talking about it right now feels like putting the preheat instructions at the end of the recipe, but you never know. You might not discover that a game isn't for you until you get pretty deep into it. Although I've been talking about this like it's a commitment, you're not actually signing a contract when you start practicing a game seriously. Maybe this helped you get a better idea of what you wanted in a game, or even that playing seriously like this isn't what you want. All of that is fine. They're games. Play what and how you like to. After my game plan was worked out, the nature of my practice changed. From then on, it was all memorization and consistent execution. This is where my journal entries dropped off. There was really nothing new to add. And at this phase, more than any other, there will be bad days. Frustrating days. Times when you are so close and then can't get back there. The day after personal best, I played as if I was someone else who watched yesterday's run, took some notes which were mostly misspelled, and then played according to those notes. And then a short time after that, on March 11th of this year, I finally got the run I was looking for. I've also linked the playthrough where I achieved my goals if you would like to take a look at that. There's a lot of things I was happy about in that run, and some things that made me cringe too. I got hit in stage 3, I lost a pretty decent chunk of points there. The early part of the run could have looked a lot better. There will always be ways to improve. You might reach your goal and not be satisfied because you know how much more you can do. I won't tell you how far to go with this. If you're at that point and enjoy the game enough, there's no reason to stop. In my case, there's higher difficulties and a different game mode that I can move to if I want. It's not unheard of for someone to keep playing one of these games for a year or more just looking for more ways to improve or even just mess around with things. Not bad for a type of game that takes around half an hour to play from start to finish. But there is one last thing I want to add. Something that applies to pretty much everything, but might not be obvious for this genre. Friends make it better. I didn't really talk to anyone else about what I was doing for most of this project. That worked out fine. There's something nice about working on something that only you know about. You can avoid pressure that way. But towards the end, I started sharing gameplay and meeting a few people, and that sort of thing helped me in a few ways. It kept me consistent with practice. It eased up the stress from constantly repeating certain things, and it's nice to share the little steps forward with people who will understand them. But what really made a difference was after I was done with Danmaku Unlimited 3 and picked up a game that I didn't understand at all. Having someone to help teach you how things work and what you should focus on makes things go a lot smoother, and so does that bit of encouragement here and there when I felt like I was kind of stupid for not learning things faster. There is a community out there, you know? It can be nice to tell someone that you got your first qualify for stage 1 and they know what that means and why it's a big step forward. I think that's all I wanted to talk about when it comes to moving from casual play to non-casual. I know most of this video sounded more like a how-to video than a guide on whether it's right for you. What I hope is that by listening to this guide you have a better idea of whether the things I described are appealing to you, and if that's not enough, that maybe the sources I linked would give you something else that you needed to figure it out. However you decide to play, I hope you have fun. Bye!